I completely agree with what Mark Dutt said, and actually some studies, I just heard some studies that were presented in a seminar last week, that actually what is more important than learning and going to courses or to seminars is actually learning by doing. Learning by doing is more productive. You learn more from using the tools and learning from others than by just looking at textbooks. So that is something which I think would be very useful for enterprises in African countries. So maybe I stop here at this point.
Thank you so much. Then that's a very good summary. I think this is great, and we'll come back to you in terms of specific questions. Then finally, let me come to Yusuf. For your opening words and maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you also for the opportunity, to be part of this panel, actually. And then I will follow, almost like on Mark and Pierre, what we have seen before, but I will talk much more about, what technologies are beneath, this innovation we are talking about, right? And then the impact of those technologies, actually. We are talking about artificial intelligence and also machine learning these days, right? What that means, these are really technologies which are trying, actually to mimic human intelligence. They have a lot of usages in all areas or on our lives, today, in the financial sector, in the healthcare sector, in the manufacturing sector, and the services sector. We are talking about also, the robotic process automations, which are actually machines trying to replace humans, to perform some of those automated tasks, right? They are extensively used, in the banking and the financial services sector, especially in the north, but we can think of like in the near futures, these technologies also coming into Sub-Saharan Africa. And then they can have a potential usage also on the logistic and also on the manufacturing sectors in Sub-Saharan Africa. We also have this technology called the big data and analytics, which actually can help businesses actually in the decision-making process. There is also this technology called the distributed ledger technology, right? Or sometimes we call it actually the blockchain technology. I can see, many usage on this in Sub-Saharan Africa. One of the usage of this is really in the privacy part of it, right? To help in terms of real identifications because we know that the informal sector, I think Pierre touched on to that. The informal sector, actually innovation in the informal sector. But one of the things, really to get this informal sector development and then to be able, actually to create quality jobs and so on is really one problem is the identification problem, actually, to make the informal formal, actually. And then this distributed ledger technology can really help in somehow in that. And also this technology also, if we think of the smart contracts, right, that we are getting from this technology, the smart contract, I think, can also be very useful in many, part of our use in Africa, especially if you think of land titles, right? Because we know there are many issues around, across the continent in terms of the land title issues, actually. Then probably this technology also can be very helpful in terms of really adding to that, and also the development of the agricultural sector. And the last technology I really want to talk about is really the cloud computing-based services. You see, if you look at many SMEs in Sub-Saharan Africa, they have very limited, resources. I think really, being able, to really, this development of cloud services can be very useful for those small enterprises, because sometimes they don't have the resources to invest in all the functions, they need actually to operate, actually. But be able, to, on the subscription basis, to buy part of the services just they need can be really very efficient in terms of running the business, and then also focus on the core businesses. Then why, I start with this one, let me get to just few sectors, quickly, in these remarks before I lend you over to you, Joguna. Let's say, if you look at the financial services sector, I think, one of the sectors which will be really affected by this technology and is already affected by it and will be even more affected by it is the financial services sector. we can see all across the continent, I mean, actually, the digitalization of the financial services. This is really effective way even banks and the financial services, I mean, sector do businesses and also the way, I mean, jobs are being affected by that. Of course, this technology also will bring a lot of benefits to the continent because it will probably, I mean, help in terms of really improving financial inclusions, I mean, on the continent, which will also help the businesses and then helps also in the creation of jobs. Another sector I can see really the usage of these technologies, I mean, even especially with the COVID, is the healthcare system, actually, the healthcare sector. Indeed, if you look at really the number for healthcare workers per 1,000 inhabitants in many African countries is very, very low, and one of the lowest, I mean, compared to the rest of the world. But actually, by being able, I mean, to use virtual technologies, actually, to bring people closer to doctors, healthcare professionals, actually, this can be very helpful, actually, in terms of really increasing access to the healthcare system, and also actually it can even help actually in terms of increasing the efficiency of the healthcare resources, I mean, really in many of these countries. The third sector, I would see really the usage of this technology and then the way it can shape really the sector is the education sector. Right? If you look at the education sector, actually, I think, I mean, like with the online platforms, with the advanced learning platforms, with also, I mean, the type of online courses or hybrid type of courses and so on, I think really the education sector will be really affected, and then it will even help, I mean, people, I mean, get access to higher educations and probably at even much lower costs somehow. And then the last one, I mean, the e-commerce. The e-commerce really will be something, I mean, that we need really to have a close look at it also, because, I mean, with these technologies also, even, I mean, across the Sub-Saharan Africa, it will really, I mean, like all these, the big data and also the analytics will help really have a better understanding of the client needs. Then we can really provide optimal services, I mean, to those clients, even at much lower cost here. Then, John, I will stop here, and then probably, I mean, we can continue, I mean, the discussion on other issues, I mean, depending on the question to follow.
Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you very much, because that is quite very, very constructive in terms of the way we navigate the whole space. In fact, what I've done is posted a message to everyone that you can post your questions in the chat box. And then what we're going to do once the panelists have actually made their comments, we can actually go through the questions. They can answer some of them. Some of them can be answered as you post them. So we would like maybe perhaps to focus on that once we deal with the next level. So I think I'm quite clear, and Yusuf and other panelists, they have come close to what we have experienced in Sub-Saharan Africa. But it appears that even that where the effects of technology is being felt, they're just pockets. And even where it is working very well, it is not in all countries. So it means that we may want to really refocus on perhaps the main thrust. Let me start with the questions that I want to start with Mark again. And I want to ask him, are countries in Sub-Saharan Africa at the risk of falling behind the fourth industrial revolution? Everybody believes that the fourth industrial revolution will be focusing on technological drive. And perhaps that is something that we may want to ask ourselves. And is Africa ready for the fourth industrial revolution? And I think this is something that everybody would like to make a point on, but let me start with Mark so that at least the points he makes can give us some, should I say, points for further discussion. Mark.
So by nature, I'm an optimist, and I think policymakers who genuinely care about the continent, could make a huge difference. So I like to think, Africa over the 21st century should show the rest of the world how to do inclusive productivity growth. Doing inclusive productivity growth is not easy. it hasn't, what do I mean by that? It's very much in line with what Pierre said. I mean, it's for me, inclusive productivity growth is productivity growth that generates better jobs for more people, especially for low income, low skilled people. So it basically takes as a starting point that trickle down has not worked. And that what Africa needs is not growth without jobs, but growth with inclusive jobs. So the challenge, of course, is governance. I mean, on the telecom side, you know, I mean, there's so many individual countries, each having their own regulator. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Africa could show the rest of the world the benefits? I mean, something that the EU hasn't politically been able to do, of really having a genuine, you know, continental regulator, or maybe across 3 regions, sub-regions of Africa, having, you know, regional spectrum auctions for regional markets. I mean, it sounds fanciful, but I think to dream big, to dream about the regional potential of Africa. So, you know, I'd like to say, you know, I think, yes, Africa is in the risk of falling behind, but it doesn't have to be. And so it has the potential. And you know, I think if Africa could show other countries how to genuinely do inclusive productivity growth, I think that would be fabulous. And so starting with an area that, again, Pierre emphasized, which I think is probably the most important for Africa, is the informal sector, just because most people who are working are in the informal sector. And so, you know, I think the first challenge is to boost the productivity of those informal people working in the informal sector. Formalization can come later, you know. Now, of course, we know that most people working in the informal sector would be better off, better allocated as workers in growing formal firms. But the formal sector is very, very small in most of these countries. Now, in spite of that, so most are what we would call sort of subsistence entrepreneurs. But there are a significant number of transformational entrepreneurs, that is, informal workers, informal owners of small firms who have the potential, by adopting technologies, to actually grow their firms. And I think that needs to be a focus. So, you know, it's not clear to me that it requires sophisticated machine learning tools. Now, of course, machine learning can help on the financial sector, as Issouf mentioned, for like scoring technologies, so that you know, having collateral is no longer a constraint, but it's rather the behavior of these firms that, you know, through their transactions, they can become credit worthy. So there are scope in certain sectors, and I think education and health can help them as well. But, you know, I do think, so we looked at the Research ICT Africa data on 9 countries. These are largely 5 and smaller workers. Like 60% of the data is self-employed entrepreneurs that don't hire anyone. So they have 0 full-time employees. There's a lot of sort of family entrepreneurs who hire their own unpaid family workers. And what's interesting there, and again aligned with what Pierre said, is that it's the adoption of very simple inventory control or point of sale software solutions. Those are the firms that have, and there's a number of them who have done it, a small number, but those are, of course, the ones that are then more productive and a little bit larger than the others. So it's these very simple management technologies. So before, you wrote on a piece of paper, you know, who your best client was, and you lost that piece of paper. Now you can track them, and you know, you can start then saying, oh, you know, they're going to come on Monday, so I should actually have some stock available on Sunday. So now I'm starting to think more like a manager. And, you know, I think through the use of these tools, you know, we can help boost the capabilities of becoming better managers. And then as the firms grow, they will want to formalize to take advantage of the benefits of formalization. But the priority should be boosting the productivity of the informal first. And so I'd like to just come back to the question, you know, Africa cannot afford to fall behind. It should show the rest of the world how to do inclusive productivity growth using the tools that allow, you know, the conversion of fixed costs to variable costs, that allow these kinds of scoring techniques to go away from requiring collateral to just transactions, and tools that will help them learn as they work. So let me stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. And I think that is very, very important, because lagging behind is one of the biggest, perhaps the weaknesses that is focusing on the second question I wanted to ask you. And the question was, has Sub-Saharan African region developed the conditions to improve systematically and quickly to absorb the current technologies that will help for the industrial revolution or even adoption?
So no, it's not yet developed the conditions. I think but it can, and I think at least our work so far indicates that the big challenge is on the technology absorption side. So you know, I mean, for me, that's part of the innovation challenge, because innovation isn't just creating something new to the world, but it's using an existing technology, as Pierre said, in a new context. And so it's really the technology adoption question. That's the main challenge. You know, what are the barriers, and how can we create an enabling environment so that entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, create apps that are actually, as I said, intuitive to use. And that actually allow them to learn as they work. And I think I'm a big believer in having small success stories be emulated. So build from concrete reality. And so if if the success of sort of Kenya that you actually helped spur with fintech services, could kind of show the potential of the regional dimension throughout IACO, the East African community, and that could be a model then for other regional organizations. The problem is that there's just not enough political support, and so that the real challenge is I think political to show leaders that actually they can be re-elected and become more successful by pushing this inclusive productivity growth model. Let me stop there. I'm happy to come back.
Thank you very much. I was reading the book by Paul Collier on democracy in dangerous places, and I was like, and then at the beginning of at the end of last month, we had a plenary session where Jim Robinson was talking about the social contracts and taxation, and the question is the overlapping generations of politicians does not seem to get a lot from that, but it's a very important issue that you're coming up, because we come back to what are the institutional safeguards that allows and creates that environment, and even institutional leadership that actually sustains that environment that will allow adoption of technology. But we'll come back to that, and you can also be checking the questions that are coming up. Let me turn to Pierre, and I wanted first of all to maybe ask you the first question, which is what is the most promising technologies in Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of productivity, growth, and job creation? Because essentially, you did talk about efficiency in management and organization. It is the innovation in management is going to be very important, helped by the technology. And even for me, I'm also excited about technology navigating market segments. Africa, you talked about informal sector, but obviously I always tell myself that if you want to know whether you are successful, it's whether you can navigate different segments of the market. If you can navigate and coordinate different segments of the market, you can actually say, I'm getting somewhere. But actually, to Pierre, I would like to ask, which are the most promising technologies in Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of productivity, growth, and job creation?
Well, I think a lot can easily be learned by using the ICT tools. So the digital revolution, I think, is something which is not very difficult to adapt, to learn, and to adapt and adopt in African countries. As Issouf has said, a very colorful and clear example is M-Pesa in Kenya. It has been a successful innovation. The electronic banking, and it is being used, making it easier for agricultural farmers to get access to funding and to be able to do their business. So the digital technology, I think, is really something that can easily be applied in African countries. So the next one is that we are going to now is data-intensive technologies. And actually, that's also something that could be adopted in African countries. You just need you need to introduce some kinds of innovation that allow you to collect data about customers. And then you can use these data and then make them available to other providers and clients, and then make use of these data. So that's another kind of technology, I think, which can be, which would not be too expensive to introduce in African countries, and which could be very useful in terms of productivity for African producers. So those are, I think, two kinds of technologies, modern technologies. Now, artificial intelligence, I don't know too much about it. I think this is a technology that is still in the making. Most of the research is done in the United States. Maybe after a while, Africa could participate also in this technology, but maybe at this stage, it's a bit too early for African countries to go into artificial intelligence, I think. But I think the digital and the automation technology, well, automation may be not so much, because there is the manufacturing sector is not that developed in African countries, but buying these capital goods that allow certain routine jobs just to be replaced, of course, it has a direct negative effect on the labor that it replaces. But that labor can then be used in other tasks, for other tasks. It's just a matter of being flexible enough to find a new kind of occupation for these people that are replaced by robots or by machines. But that's maybe something we can discuss afterwards.
Thank you very much. Of course, the follow-up question to that is, if those technologies can be found, the whole issue is that what actually going to create incentives for them to continue is because they offer some returns to the investors in those technologies. And if there are no returns, obviously, then it means that they will not be feasible. Do you think they have returns? You know, like Roderick gives examples of, if you invest and you cannot appropriate the returns of your investment, then it means that it's going to be very difficult to make a visible case. What is your take on this in terms of this technological and economic feasibility of this technology, the economic feasibility, or even the returns on these technologies? Because that's maybe the reason why they are going to sustain before the industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. You need, sooner or later, you have to make a return. Otherwise, you get out of business. But the thing is, you don't need, I mean, we are not talking here about R&D that is extremely expensive, like in the pharmaceutical industry, for which you have to invest millions of dollars before getting a return and waiting years and years. There are very simple technologies that do not cost a lot to adopt, and then you adapt it to the local needs, to the local circumstances. A student of mine has done a study looking at the informal sector in different countries, in particular in Ghana, and he found that competition from the informal sector was actually a very strong incentive also for innovation in the formal sector, because firms in the formal sector, they often complain that the informal sector competes with them because somehow maybe they don't have to pay taxes or they have it much easier to operate. But precisely, this is one source of innovation in African countries. It's that flexibility that exists in the informal sector and that allows, producers in the informal sector to reap small benefits, but sufficiently small for them to benefit from it, to survive, to prosper, and maybe to also give spillovers to firms in the formal sector. So I don't think, just to summarize, I don't think you need big returns. Of course, you need returns, but those need to be very big. It depends on the initial cost that you have to incur to adopt the innovation.
Thank you. I think that corroborates some of the arguments that I've had. Whenever I went into the rest of Africa and even in Europe, the idea was that the telcos here in Kenya, maybe the first mover advantage was that they made a lot of profits from they benefited from the initial product, M-Pesa, that is the first electronic payments platform. But then I looked at the GSMA data and actually showed that actually the voice was much more profitable, and the volume of transactions or maybe returns was coming from the voice, not the money transfer. And so it beats, but essentially the point you're making is that you don't have to have high returns, but also make that technological instrument so everybody is so much dependable on it, because it solves so many of the solutions outside what was perhaps intended. And maybe that is what the digital financial services has propelled itself. And that's a fantastic point. Let me go to Yusuf finally. So to what extent, I think I want to ask you two questions. The first one is that, to what extent are jobs in Sub-Saharan Africa at risk of being substituted by technology? This is a debate that comes up, but it's good to bring it up and open discussion, because some people do come with premature conclusions about this. But let me hear from you, Yusuf.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, for this question. I mean, of course, I mean, like we all know, right? I mean, with new technology, with technological change, of course, some jobs will disappear, and at the same time, also we have a new skills, I mean, which will emerge because new opportunities also will appear and so on. But in the case of Sub-Saharan Africa, I would say, I mean, like, of course, there are risks and so on, but I would say, I mean, the advantage or the benefit for me far out really I mean, surpass actually really the risk actually. Why is that? I mean, because I will give, I mean, two reasons. I mean, for me, I mean, two reasons I can see. First of all, we have a very young population. That's really key. I mean, of course, with a young population, we need really to create more jobs for that young population. But at the same time, with a young population, this young population, they are already using technology. And then it's much easier for them really to embrace technology because they are young. This is what they like to say, is fashion for them and so on. Then that's a real one thing. The second thing with a young generation is that they are malleable. That you can just easily adjust the behavior actually to really be able to enter this new type of economy we need, I mean, to develop and so on. That's really then the young population aspect of Africa. I think really I see that as really a big opportunity, I mean, for us actually. The second one will be basically actually what people will see as maybe, I mean, some disadvantage. For me, I see that an advantage is because our economies are at the early stage of development, right? Then if you're at early stage of development, then you can easily make big transformation without incurring too much cost. Actually, it's not like, when you are so well developed, you already have manufacturing, you have industries already using some technology, then you have to change everything and so on. Then it becomes a really big challenge and so on. And we are seeing that also with the environmental issue. Actually, you can see some of the companies, because the cost is so huge for them actually to adopt the new technologies, that then they don't do it, right? But in Africa, I think it's even, even if we talk about green technology also, for our economy is at the early stage, it's much easier for us to embrace some of those, those technology. Then, as I said, I see, yes, there are risks, some jobs actually being affected and so on. But for me, I see real much more benefit than any, the risk, we can even talk about. Let me just talk about some of the potential benefits of this technology I'm seeing actually, right? Then, you see, I cannot turn your questions, in another way around. I think, the technology can help us really combat corruptions and also capital flight. Because, with the technology, actually, it's much easier to trace back some of those transactions and so on, then it's much easier. Then, you see, this can help in terms of value creations. It can also help actually the African country to reduce immigrations, because one of the big issues, if you look at especially, most of the countries, especially if you look at countries that are close to the north, actually, like Mali and so on, the south countries, you see a lot of people, a lot of young generation going, to Europe and so on, because they are looking for better opportunities. Then if with technology, we can really be able, we are able, to create a really new jobs for these young generations, then probably, we can really tackle some of these issues related to immigrations. Another, advantage, and I think we should really learn from Asia and somehow in that, but I would say the aging population in Europe, in America, and even somehow in Asia, like in China and so on. I think really in Africa, we can really take advantage of that, because the population is aging, there are more services, and then the workforce is not enough there, to be able to deliver on all of it. Then technology can help, but at the same time, if technology can help outsource some of those jobs, maybe we can take some of those jobs, in Africa. But for that, we will need really skilled labor forces, actually. But later on, I can come back on how we can build those skilled labor forces, actually. The other thing is also, really, we can take advantage of this technology also to improve, actually, because we are talking about really the middle class improving, in Africa, right? We hear about that a lot, actually. But we can also take an opportunity of this technology to improve again, really the income of this middle class, really to have more improvement on the middle income class, because we can really improve the skills, and then with the skills, this now in this type of really works and so on, then the salaries and so on can be improved. Of course, talking about all this are not rosy, because we have to be very careful about really income inequalities, right? Because if we have skilled workers and then we have some unskilled workers, then you can really increase really inequality gaps actually in our country. We have to be very careful about that actually.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then I will stop here for that. Yeah. Sorry.
You're done. Okay, I wanted to go to the next slide, to the next question. Obviously, those are very good answers and good examples. And one of them, for example, I was discussing with some industrialists, and I started talking about, if you look at manufacturing output in any country in Africa, outside South Africa, you'll find that actually manufacturing value added has stagnated at a very low level and actually declined in the last 2 decades or so. It has actually declined. Now, if technology is going to help you lift that manufacturing value added by perhaps efficiency, it is likely to actually increase the value added in manufacturing. And that does not imply loss of jobs. In fact, stagnating and declining means that there has been massive loss of jobs. Now, the second question I wanted to follow up on that is that there should be some potential approaches that can be used to promote these technologies while mitigating the risks that people perceive. I don't know how you see that, Isu.
Yeah, exactly. There are potential, approach, to promote this one. Actually, I will free answer to that, right? I think, the first one for me would be basically to look at really, I mean, we have to really think of training programs actually to help really convert existing workers, right? I mean, for them really to be, I think, I mean, Mark mentions that somehow, I mean, in his intervention at the beginning, and also Pierre touched on to that, really the existing workers, we really need really to upgrade the skills actually, to be able, I mean, to keep them on the job, but to be able really to embrace the new technological type of jobs and so on. That's the first way. Then I'm talking about the existing workers, right, to upgrade their skills and so on. But at the same time also, I mean, I think there is a really big issue if we are talking about the future work and so on, the future generations, how can we actually adjust the current curriculum of the education system, and at the same time, how can we develop a new or really curriculum, I mean, actually to be able, I mean, to face these potentials for the future generation, because we are talking about really new things coming, the technology, how to really improve those technologies really in the training and so on. And for that, really for the, to change the curriculum or to adjust the curriculum, I see also technology as a solution for that, right? I mean, not only we need to do that to be able to take full advantage of technology, but I also see technology to be able to help into that. Think of really, you see, across Africa, if you take any country, like you take Kenya, you take Ivory Coast and so on, you have very excellent schools, I mean, in most of these countries. But we can maybe leverage on those excellent schools across the continent to see how we can really partners have South-South cooperation among those schools, really, but with technology you can do that, because before you have to have these or really teachers, excellent teachers and so on to be physically present. But now with a very excellent program, you can really, others can benefit from it because you have a distance learning, you have a remote learning and so on. So then with technology, probably really, we can really put together the resources in the education system to see really we can leverage into that and so on. And also there is also this cooperation with North-South also actually. We have the best schools and we have very good programs in the West. Then probably from those programs with real technology and learning, maybe you can take advantage of it. Let me just take an example, quick example from my own university. With the COVID, for example, what have we done? We have many students now, they are not even in Canada. They are staying at home and then they are following all those courses. They will get exactly the same quality degree as if they had come into Canada. You have at least two benefits to that. Not only they're getting the same type of education, I mean, as if they are come to Canada, they are consuming back home, then the money is still there. And at the same time also they are paying less, right? I mean, because it becomes less costly now to go abroad, to pay education, to pay for your livings and so on, so on. Then you see, I mean, there are many benefits, I mean, that can come up with for technology to enhance education, but at the same time also we have to really adapt education to be able actually to respond to these new challenges. The last one, I think, I mean, really is a big part in Africa, this is the informal. Now with the technology, we can have a very nice strategy to formalize the informal actually. And then technology can help into that a lot actually. If you think, because I mean, if you look at the informal in Africa, and I think this is related to some question I mean in the chat actually. The informal in Africa is not exactly the informal in Canada. When you talk about informal in Canada, people in informal in Canada, usually when you go to informal, you go to informal to cheat here. But in Africa, people don't go stay in the informal necessarily to cheat. It's because, I mean, it's very hard for them to formalize, even if they want to do it. Sometimes the system even doesn't allow it easily. But you see, with the technology, we can easily, I mean, formalize, I mean, like business registration can be really streamlined, and then it can be really much quicker, and it can become even more efficient. Then business registration, the first one. Identification problems can be really actually overcome somehow with that. You have also, I mean, like the taxation, right? And that's a really big issue, right? How can you, I mean, do a right taxation, I mean, with the informal and so on, with the technology, because sometimes taxation is not only people don't want to pay taxes, but sometimes even I mean, the taxation agents also, there are corruptions and so on, then the burden become too heavy. But if you have this type of technology, where technology can help so somehow make the payment much easier and so on, then we can help. And also access to finance, because we know business development, one big hindrance to business development is basically actually access to finance. But with technology, and you all know, you know that you're much better than me because mobile money and so on, you are one of the father of that, and you know exactly how technology can really help actually in terms of business development, in terms of accessing to finance actually, right? I mean, these are really the three I want to go. Then improve the skill of existing workers, think of really curriculum design to to really face the new challenges. And then the third one will be really to really leverage on technology to really make the informal formal actually.
Thank you, Yusuf. In fact, one of the good examples is actually the platform we have now. Before the COVID, what we would have done is to agree with what we agreed with Ramiro, is that we are going to have this session here in Nairobi. What would have done is to fly everyone to Nairobi, and we should be sitting somewhere in a hotel talking to each other. But right now we are talking to each other, but we are not even moving from the comfort of our homes, and we are likely to be even more efficient. So you can see that it is actually a very, very efficient way of doing things. But also that you mentioned, Theo can give you also a good example. We train graduate students in Sub-Saharan Africa. And sometimes we have to bring all the students in Nairobi and others in Pretoria in South Africa. And then we have to fly the teachers to train them. So what we have done since last year is actually that those teachers, those trainers will be training them from their comfort of their offices in Europe, Africa, and even America. But the students will also be in their own universities without movement. So you can imagine there are some positives about that. And perhaps it's a question of, it was not yet time to think about a wholesale application. We thought even at the AERC, we talked about breaded running in some sense, but now it is coming to us that if you want to safeguard against disruptions, then it means that you have to adopt the platforms that are available. Thank you very much for those examples. They are very useful examples. Now, I think I have, of course, asked all the questions I wanted to, but now I may need to turn to the questions asked by the participants and then open the floor. Let me first of all look at them. They started where? Started with Nelson Wawire. How are you, Nelson? I would like Yusuf to expound on how technology can be used to make informal sector businesses formal. Sometimes businesses choose to be informal. Yusuf, you have comment on that. I could also add to that once you have made some remarks on that.
Yes, and I mean, I think, if you look at, as I said, I really want to make the parallel with informal in the development, and that really can help us really the approach we adopt really to informal in Africa. Because sometimes we try to take, solution from elsewhere, but it's not doesn't apply. If I look at the informal in Canada, most of the time people go to it is criminal and so on, so. But because you have no reason, really to be in informal unless you want to cheat the system. But if you look at those informality, in most of our countries, sometimes it's not because people want to cheat necessarily, because it's because really they don't know how to become formal or many reasons. And also, if you look at really, the informal, what we call it the informal, look at the information technology, right? The telephone, the mobile phone. If you look at, most of the really, the revenue from the formal sector and that technology is coming from the informal. When you want to buy airtime, what do? You go on the street, you buy with someone on the street. You see, there really a big dynamics between the formal and the informal really in the African country. That's what I'm saying, that the technology really can help us formalize some of those informal really sectors really to bring them in the formality. As I said, the taxation, is one big issue, and the business registration is a big constraint in many of the countries. Actually, the technology can help really in that sense. Identification is a big problem. The technology can help, because with technology now you can identify people, and people can cheating become much harder and so on. Then I really think with technology we can really help much more businesses become much more formal, actually. Even, those businesses who choose to become informal, there are many reasons why they choose to become formal. I will just give you, a quick example. I don't want to monopolize the things. So I was in Abidjan, recently, and I tried to open an account, right? I just tried to open an account because I was a business, I was trying to have an account for that business. Up to now, I don't have an account, because when I went to a bank to open an account, they asked me many things. Okay, I brought some of them. And then now I had to go to the fiscal office, the revenue agency, to get another paper, to be able to open an account. And then I look at it. I say, okay, this is me, right? I'm a professor, I'm an intellectual, I will go through all this burden. Think of someone in the street, he goes to a bank and he's trying to open an account because this is a formal way to get it formalize it, right? And then you ask him all this and so on. Then this is a burden actually to keep it very formal. And then I'm asking myself, why they don't let me open my account? Then I become formal, right? Then you see my money coming to the system. Then you can much more trust me, and the taxation and the fiscal revenue can much more trust me, actually. Then you see some of those really, and of course the bank was doing it because this is the regulation, they have to ask for this, they have to ask for this, they have to ask for this, and so on. But if you put really your shoulders on the shoulders of the informal people, people who did not go to school and so on, and then you do all this, then probably they will choose, to stay on the informal. This is just really a simple example I'm trying to give actually. But if we had the technology which could actually enhance some of these, the paper they asked me and so on, probably I could have done it much easier and the account will have been open now, but I had to wait maybe for 1 more week because I had to wait for the administration to give me that paper before being able to open my account, right? I will stop here for that question.
Thank you, Yusuf. I think there is a cost for formality, and you're right. There is a very high cost for formality. And one of them is purely the administration. And that is a very painful way. And you're talking about even opening a bank account. I think the last time I went to a bank, it was like switch off your phone, put everything metallic somewhere, It was like, where are you? I mean, a bank is not where you go and talk to the manager. And it's you're being harassed even to get it. But anyway, I think the other cost, and I think Wawira was asking this because it is not a choice to be informal. It's actually because of the way the markets, different segments of the market have very, very different stringent measures. Even entry and exits are always problematic. I think Mark made a comment, and I was happy about that comment that the trickle down, the trickle down theory does not work. But for me, I do believe it can work. It's only that we interfered with the marketplace. And because markets is where economic rents are shared and distributed. But once you interfere with that functionality, then obviously the trickle-down effect will not work. And that is why we have segmentation of markets. And sometimes the segmentation depends very much on income levels, as well as even distances from the periphery. And it's something that will come. And Yusuf, just because opening a bank account is just one thing, visiting a bank account which belongs to you is another thing. You see that is a major issue. I don't know whether Wawira is satisfied with the answers that have been provided before we go to the next question.
Can I just come in for a second on this question?
Yes, Mark. Yeah,
I think it's a very
Mark.
important one. So using the Research ICT Africa data, which again is largely 90% of firms are informal, 60% of firms are self-employed with no full-time employees. We basically looked at their responses to, just 2 simple questions on whether we rank them as formal or informal. And one is, whether they're registered with some municipal or local authority, and the other is just if they've registered with some national tax authority or other national authority. And clearly there's an incredible amount of heterogeneity among informal firms, and there are some informal firms that look very much like the formal productive firms, and then there are many that are subsistence entrepreneurs. And I guess I'm just urging a word of caution to start by having formalization as sort of the main policy thrust. I guess I think we need to consider at least the benefits for society of having an initial thrust on boosting productivity of those firms that are willing and able, that are interested in boosting their productivity, those informal firms, and not to necessarily link that immediately to formalization, just because there's so many reasons that firms remain informal. And over time, offer, as Yusuf says, much more simplified routes to formalization that digital can offer. That's great, but I I would urge to be careful not to make sort of formalization a condition for offering support to boost productivity.
Thank you, Mark. And that is very, very important. When we started the digital financial services, especially the electronic payments platform, transactions platform, I actually said that this would be an indirect way of formalizing informal markets. Why? Because we can see the financial flows, and you need not do anything, and don't rush to tax them, because essentially all of a sudden it will be an indirect way. But within no time, we started taxing transactions. In fact, today, I have seen just today's paper, they are now revisiting that article that I wrote in Brookings on the taxation of the mobile phone based transactions. What happens is to reverse the gains, because they are sensitive to costs. And this is something that you're right. I think we should actually create market conditions that attract the informal sector to ourselves. I don't know, well, Nelson Wawira, do you feel satisfied with the comments that have come, or responses to your question?
Yes, sir. I feel satisfied because it is wrong for us to say that we can use technology to formalize the informal, because the informal are there by choice, and most of them are by choice. And research has shown that, in fact, people are now moving from the formal to informal because of the certain policies, especially taxation policies and other policies that are not so favorable to business. Thank you, sir.
I think it's not so much of a choice, Nelson. It's not so much of a choice. It's actually the hostile conditions that prevail. And for me, most of the time, for example, if you look at it in even different markets, it's like those people even employed in the informal markets or even investing in informal markets are like in a waiting option to join the formal markets, either employment or even formal businesses. It's only that the conditions and even restrictions are quite hostile. But anyway, it is something that that Mark has said, is that I think what we create are conditions that are going to create to allow or even to attract informal businesses into formality, not formality to be taxed, but formality so that they can transact in formal platforms. And that's something that we can revisit. Let me go down the questions again. John Karueda, are there ways to leverage information technology to enhance women and youth participation in agriculture in Africa, noting that agriculture is by far the largest employer? I don't know who would like to take that among us, the panelists, or even any other person.
Andrew, I can add something on this?
Yes, Chris.
Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, for this one, I will just add an example. I was involved actually in Cote d'Ivoire because the government was trying to create, for example, a commodity exchange for agriculture. And we know that, I know across the continent, there are many initiatives on this area and so on. And one argument, I mean, because we have to train people, agricultural people and so on, and people will come and say, okay, commodity exchange, it will bring speculation and so on, so on. But I think, I mean, one argument also, I mean, we use actually to explain somehow how commodity exchange can be used for somehow is really to bring a risk management infrastructure to the system. Because you see, one big hindrance for the participation of women and youth to the agricultural sector, and then to expand really, we talk about productivity and so on, to expand really the production is finance, access to finance actually. But of course, access to finance, it has to come from the banking sector, from microfinance sector, and so on. But at the same time, when you ask the bankers, they will tell you that this sector is too risky, right? Because you don't have collateral and so on. Okay. Then one way to bring really the risk management tool to those institutions. I know when we talk about exchange, people see that as finance and so on. But I just want to bring really this small thing for people to understand the linkage between all this. But of course, to be able, I mean, really to have a good financial institution, to be able to lend really to agriculture, to rural area people and so on, but you have to find a way to provide the financial institutions with a platform that can really manage the risk. It's either insurance companies or the banking sector and so on. But to provide them this risk management really framework and so on, we need an institution to do that. And then a commodity exchange can be somehow tools, I mean, actually to achieve some of this. And then with a commodity exchange, it can bring really those institutions with really the tools they need to better manage the risk. And then with that better risk management, probably they can extend more loans, I mean, actually to the agricultural sector. And then this can increase really the participation in the agricultural sector. I'm not saying that the commodity exchange is a solution for everything, but I'm just trying to explain how we can really want to actually we can use also to really expand credit to this sector and then to increase participation, for example. Stop here.
Thank you.
I think maybe add
yes, Mark.
Based
yes,
on
Mark. Thank you.
Some examples I've seen from working in Senegal, in the Casamance area in the south, where mango, for instance, is a big crop that has a lot of potential. E-commerce platforms, or just platforms where I think there's a lot of scope for learning through value chains, you know, and what these platforms enable is it makes it much easier for women and youth to participate. Another nice example on the mangoes in Casamance actually is Orange Sonatel has been working with some local researchers in coming up with a tool it's actually based on machine learning to use 4G phones to estimate the number of mangoes in each tree, to get a sense upfront of the size of the harvest, because they want to find ways to make these technologies interesting and useful for local farmers. And so I think there's a range of options from platform technologies that make it easier for women and youth to participate. So I just want to give those couple of examples.
Thank you very much, Mark. In fact, I remembered one of the papers, my earliest papers that I read, I think is by Jennifer Aka on Niger. And it was that's when the mobile phones came in, even before we used them for any other functionalities. It was used to solve the information asymmetry problems. This woman wants to go to the market to deliver her goods. But the first thing is to search what is the price of the goods she's going to sell, and looks at different locations. By the time she leaves home, she has already computed her profits because she knows the price in that market, the price in that market, and she decides where to deliver the market. That was a very interesting paper. So in terms of information asymmetry problems, can be a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage especially in the agricultural sector, where they are perishable goods. I think I don't know whether John, you're satisfied with the answers, or you would like to ask more questions about that. John Karuida, is he still with us?
Juguna?
Yes. Yes, Pierre.
I see there is another question related to this one, which is actually asked to me by Manuel Mazzine: how to transfer managerial technologies to small farmers, since most of them are illiterate. Yeah, I think it's a bit related to what we are just saying here. Of course, the first thing would be to make them literate, so to increase the education also in the farming villages. But another way is, for instance, when the insurance agency goes to these villages, for instance, for climate insurance, that's an opportunity for them to explain to the farmer, even the illiterate farmers, the benefit of adopting certain technologies. Another thing would be to have institutions set up in place that go and visit these farmers and explain to them the new technologies. And then finally, there is simply the transfer of knowledge from one farmer to the other farmer. So farmers in a certain village easily transmit and share the knowledge. So if one knows it, it quickly diffuses to all the others. So those are ways in which I think we can transfer technologies.
And maybe if I can just add video, of course, if I can just add, video is also a very powerful way to just transmit the messages that Pierre is talking about to illiterate people.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. You can imagine even now it's available. You can imagine even the phone itself can provide even these images. So I think if you look at the last 15 years or so, or maybe call them 20 years, where even mobile phones became affordable. So much has changed, and it has improved the information flow and has solved so many information asymmetry problems. Thank you very much. Issouf, there is a question for you on, Africa is not doing much in storing and unlocking intelligence and driving insights from big data. What should be done to make the continent capture and utilize the big data that is available?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a really a good question. I mean, I think I will come back to this education things. I mean, I talked about earlier. I mean, actually, I think it's key really, the training programs we have in our university, in our colleges and so on. We really include models really to improve real skills in this area. I think the AERC is doing a good job already. I mean, with really, state-of-the-art training on this area, trying to follow. You have some schools also which have developed actually programs already on big data, on data scientists, and offering already program. I know I'm involved in somehow in the scientific council, for example, of a statistical school in Cote d'Ivoire. They already have a master's degree program on the data science things and so on, and then trying to teach really people on this real state of technology. And I can tell you also in terms of education, you see the laboratory for financial engineering I'm leading at Laval University. We do organize training actually on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. Every time I organize a really training, and these are free, but they are online. I can tell you that more than half of the people who follow it are from the African continent to follow it. Right? People from the central bank, from the public administration, the private administration, and then many of them really are very interested into following those training and so that means that there is a need for it to learn it, and also probably I guess because they really need to use it in their own day work and so on, and there is a growing demand for that, and that's why I think that actually with technology also we can leverage into that, even if we don't have expert in our specific university necessarily, but you have many courses available out there and so on. Then with technology, people can follow those courses online, and then be able to know exactly what these technologies, the usage of this big data analytics and so on, the techniques used for this. And then you see recently, the Economic Society has it's a annual meeting. It was in Abidjan actually. I was there actually, and then they had this training. Part of it. Actually in the Economic Society, and then the training they did almost. All the training online. Actually, you have maybe 20 or 30% of the people were real on site. The rest was connected online and so. And it went very well actually. And these are state-of-the-art economic techniques. Really, were teaching. Those young Africans. Scholars on these techniques and so on. And then I think there is. I think there are initiatives on the way on the continent to really train, the young scholars onto that. We need to do more, of course, but with technology really can help us do even more actually to get them connected to training provide elsewhere. But the last thing I want to really mention this one also is because when we are talking about big data, you can have a training, but at the same time, you have to be able to apply it to something. Then you have to have a data also, right? Then the data collections and the availability of data also is a key issue also. And that goes to the institutions on the continent. I know for my own research, getting the data sometimes, I've been doing the research on the banking sector and so on. Sometimes getting even the data we get much easily, when we're in Canada, in the US and so on, it's really very difficult to get those data actually. Then when you go, everything is secrecy, right? And then at one time, we cannot really apply this kind of tools and actually to be able, to really guide decision makers and so on. And I think, there's some part already to do with institutions to sensibilize them on really the release of data and the collection of data, of course, quality of data collection, but at the same time, when there is the data, to make the data available, everything is not secrecy. At some point of time, you have to release it for people to be able to use it, to be able, to guide decision making actually. Yeah. Stop here.
Thank you, Yusuf. Most of the, in African countries, most of the organizations that collect data do not know exactly what that data can be used for. And that is one of my pitfalls. Because most of the time I got data from even government offices and tried to interpret that data. They were quite disturbed how it, the kind of implications it has. I had to create my own even what I call dashboard indicators. because of the difficulties of collecting the data, and also it is stored in areas where, and perhaps in disparate areas that you don't even know how to get it. I think that is a problem that we have. We may want to look at it. And to save on
Can
time,
I just come in on a couple of things on data?
Yes, Mark, yeah.
So I think this is an area where I think there would be benefit from thinking creatively at a continental level. I think first there's this danger of data nationalism for policymakers at a national level, sort of not to understand the real benefits from sharing data and from learning from data across countries, and kind of forcing data to sit in national data centers just for lack of understanding. Second, I think maybe in the agriculture area, I mean, Africa is so rich in different microclimates, in different, you know, locally specific knowledge on climate, on earth conditions, soil conditions, you know, actually sits with each individual farmer. They're asset poor, but they actually know a lot about their little plot of land. And, you know, maybe it's sort of dreaming, but there could be eventually a way to collect, aggregate, and derive value and give that value back to the farmers, together with maybe some payment for the data that they know about their local you know, context, in ways that can benefit regions and the continent. So now, and the third piece is to be able to take advantage of that data, you need, you know, data algorithms, you know, machine learning algorithms that are accessible and that people know how to use. That's not for everyone, you know, and in fact, you don't need to know how, you know, AI works to be able to derive the benefits as a farmer, but there needs to be some expertise to derive knowledge from the disparate data based on a set of tools of algorithms. So, you know, some kind of institution, maybe at the continental level in this area, could be actually a good investment. It's just a thought.
Thank you. That's great. That's great, Mark. You know, at the AERC, we are developing a study, a scouting study on data management, data governance, and data policy, which includes protection and all that. But because each and every country you find in Africa today, they are developing a data protection bill. But essentially, we really need to come down first and talk about the data management, data governance, and even data policy. So that it means it's a whole, and we have some funds from Hewlett Foundation on this. It is something that we really need a lot of help. I think we'll come back to that. But Mark, also there was also a question that was raised by Ramiro, and he's actually talking about what they covered in other countries, and they looked at adoptions for adoption. Obstacles for adoption. Big farms demand more public goods. Medium farms are more geared towards market complements like finance and skills. SMEs don't even have an idea what artificial intelligence means. And he's asking you, did you find something like that?
So yes, there's a lot of heterogeneity across firm size, more or less in line what they found. A couple of interesting things is most firms have an overconfidence in the belief that they are using more sophisticated technologies relative to other national firms than they in fact are. And that's actually a likely deterrent of adoption. You know, if firms think, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well, even though they're not, then they don't see the need to upgrade. So that's something that cuts across firms, but very much in line with what Ramiro says. We do find that there are different obstacles according to the size and sophistication and knowledge of the firm. And in particular, the last point Ramiro makes about SMEs is a very important one in terms of policy, that you know, the smaller firms typically don't know what they don't know, and they also aren't aware of government programs that are meant to help firms in general. Yes, I agree.
Thank you very much. And in fact, maybe these are the kind of factors we can use to turn the tables and actually make them incentives for the large firms to adopt this, the kind of technology we want for the medium-sized firms. And for the SMEs, we need to train them. We need to train them so that we can turn these drivers into incentives that make them change. That is, for me, very, very important. I don't know whether, Ramiro, you feel like it is an addition. We can use this to turn the tables and make it like an incentive to the firms at different levels and different segmentation.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I like this idea. I think that, again, I mean, also when Mark talk a lot about the capability inside the firm, right? I think that it totally, I mean, I agree with the focus on skills, but I think that we need to create profitable businesses, you know? So in a way, we need firms being dynamic. So, and I think that trying to pursue that, I mean, in order to do that, you need to think about a variety, you know, of policy frameworks, not just one for the AI, you know, specialists, whatever, but also for these firms that are lagging behind. Right?
Thank you so much. And I think there is still some question to, I think, Isuf and Mark about the challenge and the fear of technology, because it's going to displace jobs. And of course, the question is, what are the possible scenarios for employment growth?
Okay. Let's just cancel this.
Oh, Edward, do you want to raise a question? Okay, Pierre,
you want me to answer this one? If you're interested. So indeed, there is always this fear that technology is going to replace jobs. And especially the automation technology, you know, this famous study, Frey and Osborne, having shown that many jobs would disappear. But there have also been studies, including on African countries, showing that innovation can actually increase jobs. Because you have also you have, on the one hand, you have a replacement effect. On the other hand, you have a compensation effect. So you need new jobs given the new technologies. And so the question is, which jobs are going to be created by the new technologies? And studies we have made, and I think this goes also in the direction of what Mark said, that innovation, new product innovation, creates jobs, but especially creates temporary jobs and low-skilled jobs and unskilled jobs. And so that is a bit the problem. So the jobs that it creates are not, if you want, nice jobs, good jobs. So I think what has to be put in place is some kind of mechanism by which those people that are displaced can easily be retrained into some other activities for which these new technologies have a demand for. So I'm more optimistic, I think, in the same direction as Mark. I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think there is a bit of optimism, but Mark would like to add something on this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Isuf and Pierre say in this area. I'd like to add two things. One, sort of, I guess, supporting what Isuf was saying about the young and the early stage of development as being positive factors for Africa. I guess I think of it as an economist as sort of the income elasticity of demand effect. That you know, there are a lot of goods where Africa's consumption is very low because their incomes are low, and as they start increasing their incomes, they'll start increasing demands for, you know, products they actually produce. Things like really good fruits and vegetables that have higher protein content, and you know, services that are really useful in terms of education and health. And so, you know, with that income elasticity of demand, you know, there's this huge potential for increasing the output expansion effect. And it's you know, as there's a as productivity reduces costs and allows firms to be more efficient, they then can expand production, and it's by expanding production that a lot of jobs are created. You know, I agree that there's also this need of you know, the new tasks are created, but even I think the output expansion effect due to the income elasticity demand of pent-up demand really in Africa for many products, where sort of in Europe or in Japan or in the US, they're already sort of at saturation level, creates a special unique condition for Africa there. The other thing I want to mention in terms of jobs is, you know, I really do think that there's, you know, social benefits of job creation that exceed the private benefits. You know, firms are profit-making machines that only care about their bottom line, whereas society as a whole cares about jobs more. So, you know, it may be incumbent on Africa to show the rest of the world how to think creatively about the direction of technology change. I mean, I don't think Africa wants human replacing technologies. I think Africa wants human enhancing technologies. And to the extent that, you know, the enabling environment isn't yet there to generate sufficient amount of those human enhancing technologies, there may be some need to think creatively about, you know, how to use even these industrial AI and machine learning and platforms in ways that really are human enhancing rather than human replacing. So,
Yusuf, you want to add something on this? Thank you very much, Mark. And that was great.
Yes, I want to. I really share the optimism of Pierre and Mark, really, and completely agree 100%. But something I just want to add to all this is that, because I mean, like we are talking about there are two sides, right? I mean, I can be, I mean, like a producer, a SME, and then myself, I need maybe to know about technology, I mean, to be able to implement it. But as a small farmer, I don't need actually to know about artificial intelligence. No need for that. I mean, actually, we are all talking about artificial intelligence. I don't think we really need to know it, but it's in all their lives. I think really we need to create an enabling environment where providers of services to serve those people who actually can use those technology to produce those type of products. And this is a good example is the fintech industry, right? The fintech, when you are using, I mean, like your cell phone and so on, you don't even know what technology is behind it. You don't need to know that, right? You just need to make a payment. You just make a payment. But someone actually understand that, machine learning and so on, and actually develop something for business, and then was able actually to provide that services and so on. I think I'm really, as institutions also, institutional, I mean, really are really keen to help really have an environment to develop, I mean, for developers of those type of services actually to really boom actually. And then those ones can actually help, I mean, the rural people can help the agricultural people, even if the agricultural people don't understand what it's about, I mean, artificial intelligence. They maybe don't even need to know that, right? That's just what I want to add.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. And in fact, it's the same question Manuel asked, but for Manuel, it is information flow. We have massive gadgets that are providing information, including demonstration effects. Look, I think I see young people and even people, they open even the phone. They will even know how soccer is being played. They will even know which technology is being shown, how farmers are growing this. And they have even radios have FM in the vernacular languages, even the TVs. So essentially, there is a bit of information flow. There is a convergence, or maybe a more efficient platform for information flow. So it is not going to be found. Most of the information is not going to be found in textbooks. You don't have to read. Actually, it is going to be there. There are demonstration effects. For the youth, you know what? They can Google virtually anything. By the way, I realized that I can Google even a word in my own mother tongue, and I don't get a good word in English. I can Google and it gives me an answer. So essentially, we are sitting on technology, as Yusuf is saying. The phone is a major technology. you can actually get everything that you really want. And that is, I think Manuel Matsine was asking about information. It's like information flow is available there. And I think Nelson Wawire also came back to ask about governance in the region, in the regional point of view, such as economic blocks and their vehicles to boost growth. Yeah, yes, I think you are right. They are coordination. They coordinate. They coordinate policies, and that is, I think, that's a point was raised about how do we coordinate regional blocks so that actually we have the same kind of policy paradigm across countries and across regions, and that's very, very important. Look at what AU, African Union, is trying to do, even trying to replicate some of the things from the European Union. Is essentially one of the things that I like most is about policy clarity when there is a coordinator. And because I've been a policymaker, I really emphasize the issue about policy clarity. Because when the private sector is not very clear about the policy regime, then they create what I call the waiting option. So they do not participate in the market because they are waiting for more clarity. They are looking for more information to resolve any risks that may come with that. I don't know whether there are any burning questions when you look through, because I realize that going through all of them, some of them are comments, but let me first of all ask whether there are burning questions. You can raise your hand so that we can actually maybe deal with the more burning questions before, because we don't want time to be on we don't want to be crossed on time while we are still going through the list. Any burning question or comment that can come from the populace before? If not, then I can go back to the list of comments that was made. I was in Nelson Mwawire's point. Anybody who wants to add a question about these regional blocks, for me, I look at them in terms of coordination. By the way, when we look at even individual countries, what actually becomes quite a bother in African countries is a question of coordination failure. And the moment you have coordination failure, the government is supposed to coordinate most of the activities, then you have an institutional and policy failure problems. And that is why I think Wawire is raising that point. Anybody who wants to comment on any of those issues? Yes, Pierre.
Yes, another thing is the trade within the bloc of African countries. When you trade with countries within the African countries, of course, you have less of a potential gain of comparative advantage because you are more similar. But on the other hand, in terms of exchanging knowledge and exchanging knowledge about technologies, there is probably more to learn from countries that are at your level of development than you can learn from trading with the more developed countries. So an integration of trading bloc within Africa would also be very helpful in terms of technology expansion and diffusion.
Thank you very much. And that's a very good point. I think Neka Osandoro is talking about public trust. And he's giving an example about Nigeria. And I can tell you, I am one of those people who can talk about Nigeria and the financial institution. I've been sent by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation since I left governorship of the Central Bank of Kenya in 2005, sorry, 2007, is it? No, 2005. And I've gone to Nigeria twice to talk to them about the digital financial services. But the public trust, as Neka says, is actually massive. But I think it's also a fear of losing control, which I don't think the examples that we have is not coming through. I don't know who would like to comment on this question. And how do we create public trust? Is it fear of innovation, or is it fear of, I remember, let me give an example. I remember I was defending Kenya in 2009, 2010 in a financial action task force, because essentially Kenya was in the dark gray list. And one of the reasons they thought was that M-Pesa was actually a Ponzi game. And it is where people are cleaning up funds. And then I decided when I got there, when I realized that the kind of things that were going on, the comments, I asked the president to give me a space to make a presentation about the electronic payment system and the advantages of to the regulator and even to the market. And I argued that you can actually know exactly who is transacting what and what at what time and what frequency. So it means that since everybody who is transacting is registered, then it means that it's going to be a very important instrument for improving the AML CFT regime. And everybody understood it. And since then, Kenya was moved away from the global, from the dark gray list of by the Financial Task Force. That fear is consistent. That fear, those people who mentioned it that time, and I tried to create the confidence in it, maybe it's still prevalent in some countries. I don't know whether you have some examples you can give to actually tell Nineka that actually that public trust is misplaced. Sorry, that fear is misplaced, and adoption. I think the confidence in this adoption, or maybe the market itself, is waiting for this. It's only the regulator that is fearing the adoption. I don't know whether anybody can make some contribution on this. Not necessarily the panelists. Anybody can comment, please. But if you are not ready, the panelists will be ready to give some answers or even some suggestions. Oh, maybe it is quite clear. Then Patricia, talking about fintech, most countries in the sub-region do not have regulations in place to control its operations. For example, cryptocurrencies, and little or no regulations on disruptive technologies from ethical or risk point of view. I think this is a challenge. I don't know how we can talk about the cryptocurrencies themselves. For me, they are just instruments of payment. They are payments instruments. But there are some people who believe that they are currencies. They are not currencies, because currencies must have some basis of supply and demand conditions. But most of the time, like they mistake, I think this has been a good debate that has been going on cryptocurrencies. But being a regulator, I have a very clear position, but I wouldn't want to be the one to dominate it. I would like anybody else to talk about it.
If I may, I mean, like, I know, I mean, but for me, like, because we are talking about technology and how technology can help create jobs, I will kind of separate into two things, because there is the issue of technology beyond the cryptocurrency. The technology itself is not a problem, because it can be a good technology which can be used for many uses actually. The blockchain technology, because the blockchain technology can be used for identification, for smart contract, and so on. Then there is the technology. And then you can come to now the cryptocurrency itself, which actually uses that technology, and then this is like almost like a product. Of course, there is a lot of controversy, but with any type of technology, sometimes, I mean, actually, we are all in a learning zone, and then sometimes, and even the regulators, actually, you look at, I mean, most of these cryptocurrency, they are not even, I mean, regulated. And some regulators have just come up and then have decided just to stop it, right? I mean, like I was reading this morning, looks like there are two brothers in South Africa which actually disappear with millions of money from, I mean, because people were trading on that platforms. And that really, I know that's a very big challenge. And even for regulators, I mean, how regulators should react to that, because at the same time, you look at these things, these are almost virtual, right? I mean, I can be here and I can take money from people living in Kenya and so on. Then the regulator in Kenya, or can the regulator in Kenya react onto that? Maybe it comes back to this idea of coordination Juguna was mentioning, actually. We need a really strong coordination among regulators around the world, actually, I mean, to be able to stop this, I mean, this fraudulent, I mean, this is real fraud, actually. Going through, I mean, they are using technology, but actually these are really fraud going through, I mean, the cryptocurrencies itself. We really need the good, I mean, like a good coordination. But at the same time, for the regulator, I understand also the regulators, usually you don't want to ban everything, because sometimes, I mean, if you go to the extreme, then you kind of block technology. Then they are in kind of a situation where actually you want, I mean, to create an enable environment for technology progress, technology to get developed. At the same time, also, you want really to have trust, to have public trust and regulation, and then it's really not a quite easy situation. And I don't want to be in the shoulder of the regulators these days, actually. But I do know around the world, if you take the fintech, for example, what some regulators have been doing they are created sandboxes, like or innovation hubs. Like the idea of sandbox is basically you allow technology, I mean, like the development, but in some areas they can play among the same, like the idea of sandboxes, like kids playing the sandboxes, they can play among the same, and then you look at what happens to that. If there is it is promising, then after that you can really, and also as a regulator, you learn from it. Also, you learn, you can look at, I mean, what's happening, and then from there, actually, you can take actions, and then you don't take the step actually to stop, I mean, the technology, I mean, to being developed, but at the same time, you kind of watch what is happening, and at the same time, also you learn by yourself and so on. But I mean, I don't have a clear answer, I mean, to tell you exactly this is what should be done. Probably, I mean, Mark, Peter, and even Juguna, he has been a regulator at some point of time, probably can even provide us with more insight onto that. Right?
Yes, you're right, Yusuf, because even M-Pesa was called a disruptive technology, but it developed from a regulatory sandbox kind of experiment, because essentially the central bank was able to issue guidelines for it to work. But you see, that cannot be equivalent to cryptocurrencies that are coming up, because essentially those are transcending across countries. So it's a question of you who wants to go into those cryptocurrencies to understand the supply and demand conditions for them. And secondly, the regulator may not come and help you when things go wrong. I always find that the prices, that somebody is bidding the prices up, and then all of a sudden something happens, it collapses, then it starts building again. I don't think those are not real business cycles that we know about. So in a sense, for me, I would urge that, look, we only know the currencies that the central bank has the monopoly. It is a relative nationwide price. So it's essentially you look at, the exchange rate is the nationwide relative price. So the cryptocurrencies will not enter there, because even at the point of service or the point of sale, you have to convert any cryptocurrency into the currency that you want for you to effect payments. Or you have to go to a wallet or to exchange wallet units across wallets. But essentially, that is the way it is. But in terms of whether it is a technology that is going to help you, like the blockchain, in terms of management, what I think Pierre started by talking about, efficiency in terms of management, innovation in terms of the organization space, efficiency in terms of how you deal with issues. That is totally different, because it is going to be a disruptive technology to help us in terms of innovate around the space of the work that we are doing. And that is the way we should look at it in terms of the beneficial aspects of it. And I like it because this is where we are going to encourage the fintechs to actually come up with products that are going to help us in terms of moving out. I've given various examples in my case for so many years. Okay, I think Romero has finished with the relationship between formal and informal financial firms by way of implementing new technologies. I think I don't think they're division, but Mark, you would like to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to first fully endorse this idea of sandboxes, not just in the financial space, but wherever there's scope for experimentation, that they can be very useful. Let 1,000 flowers bloom and see which ones take off and learn in the process. On Ramiro's question, I was struck by a very nice paper by Chuck Sable and Piero Ghezzi. Piero Ghezzi was Minister of Industry in Peru. And what struck me is it focused on how to help informal firms, those willing and able to jump the quality hurdle, to produce consistent levels of quality, to meet specific supply chains in agriculture. Basically the successful example of Peru, now today when in North America, any supermarket you go and you buy asparagus or you buy many fresh fruits and vegetables, they come from Peru. Whereas 10 years ago, they didn't. And of course, African agriculture producers, small informal firms can learn from those experiences. And they were very much about linkages between formal firms and informal firms, namely through supply chains. There was a lot of learning taking place from the larger, either national or multinational buyers or suppliers of inputs and to the informal firms producing. And I think that's an area where there's a lot of scope actually for implementing technologies, both to boost the capabilities of simple management within smallholder farms, as well as better, choices of crops, when to water based on rainfall predictions, better insurance products based on, they're really the key fintech products to actually help overcome the resistance of smallholder farmers from adopting new technologies if they can be insured against the risks. So I think it's a very nice area for leveraging learning and thinking about technologies that can help formal and informal linkages. So full supporter of that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we've really covered a lot of time. I think we were given up to 1650, which we have done very well, given that it is the first day of the sessions. I've really enjoyed this. I don't know, Theo, did we have the rapporteur will give this at the very end, or what happens? I forgot to ask for instructions. I had seen Theo. Oh, I don't seem to see Theo. I had seen him before. Anyway, I think we will deal with that because there is a rapporteur in this session, and then we can actually make a case what we really need to do. Let me make some points. Sorry. Yes.
Excuse me. Yes, I've just been taking notes, so it's not clear.
Oh,
so
yeah, but that we are going to use your notes at the very end, isn't it? Once we come to the conclusion, you are not going to summarize the notes or what, because essentially according to the program, I was supposed to give some closing remarks, and then maybe we are going to take those notes when we summarize about each and every panel what they discussed, isn't it, Thompson?
Yes. So in the end, yeah, I will be. That was my understanding, that the notes will be, they will be shared.
Thank you very much. And I think for me, I just can make some closing remarks because I've dwelt on this, but I was on one very small side of it in terms of looking at technology and how it is going to achieve, to actually galvanize production and also even try to help some of the sectors in Africa to catch up. One of the things I've emphasized is actually we have to invest on the digital platforms if technology is going to be used. And the digital platforms are very, very important because most of them are going to enhance communication, because even when you come with your product, you need to make sure that there's confidence in it, how it works, there's adoption. And this is where it becomes very, very important. In most of my work that I've talked about technological divide. I have talked about digital financial services, and I've talked about how it has built up, moved out even to affect other sectors. For example, in the COVID-19, the countries in East Africa were able even to devise and develop a targeted social protection program. You can imagine that is something that was done to protect most of the people during the lockdowns. So it means that that digital platform out there, if it is efficient, it can be used for so many uses. But I have emphasized that what we really need to sustain that is actually to make sure that we also have connectivity, because different market segments, and we have talked about even informal markets and segmented markets. By the way, if you want to look at different markets, you'll find that the segmentation is driven by distances from the center and levels of income and so many other aspects. But if you want to navigate across different segments of the market, and even in informal markets, it is technology that is going to help us in terms of navigating those segments of the market. So I like the idea that, for example, Pierre and Mark, the points they have made about the efficiency, which is actually affecting managerial, it's affecting the organizational structure, and that is actually going to affect productivity. In addition, it's going to affect how inclusive innovation or development discourse is going to work very well. I gave an example in the main meeting how on Sunday we have 5 papers we are going to participate in International Economic Association. But for us, we are talking about growth, inequality, poverty, inequality, and redistribution. And what is the new path? And the bottom line is that Africa will have to devise its own path of development, because we tried to replicate what Europe managed to do. That was through import substitution, industrialization. But we don't know what happened. But obviously, the twist was that capital accumulation was actually very low. It could not ignite that kind of transformation. And then we thought that we could replicate the East Asian miracle. And then our export platform and even economic diversification was so limited. So in a sense, we are coming to the point where do we need to go? And perhaps the Industrial Revolution can define the path for growth. And this is very, very important. It is going to help us in terms of that. And I think that this session was very, very important to inform us about technology and also the technological adoption and new products that are coming out. But for me, the most important thing is it is also solving the information asymmetry problems. When we started the digital financial services, what came as the second revolution was virtual platform, virtual savings and credit and credit platforms. But Kenyans did not realize that it was collecting data on savings and transactions so that it can develop credit scores, which would be used to price short-term credit. And they didn't realize that. And they didn't realize that it was a revolution to change the collateral technology that was existing in credit markets that prevented its growth for many years. So you can see how technology can run across and solve some of these information asymmetry problems. So thank you very much for your participation. I really enjoyed most of the points. And of course, at the end of the session of this 3 days work, we are going to listen to the summaries and we'll be happy about what we have achieved so far. I think I stop there unless Theo, my hands, I've done my job as a moderator for this afternoon.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, Njuguna. Thank you all. Okay, it was very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we are left to say let's meet tomorrow for the next session, and I'm sure we will have an exciting day tomorrow. An exciting day tomorrow. Thank you very much, and good evening from this end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all. Bye.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Theophil, can I just speak to you after everyone has left? Yeah.
Yeah, please. Okay, no problem.
Thanks.